Information. All right, let's begin the meeting. Lehigh County Authority Board of Directors meeting of November 8th, 2021. Meeting is being held virtually with some board members present in the boardroom and others online. We will be taking a roll call of all the people attending. Everybody should be able to hear each other and be heard. So if you have any problems, let us know and begin our meeting. At this time, we'll begin with a roll call of the board, followed by staff, followed by any public that's attending.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with the board roll call. Brian Noggle.
Here.
Scott Beaver. Richard Bonner.
Here.
Norma Cusick.
Here.
Ted Lyons.
Here.
Kevin Baker. Linda Rosenfeld.
Here.
Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Amir Famili.
Present.
We have 7 board members present. We have Solicitor Mike Gall from Kings Fry present. And then staff, in addition to myself, Lisa Gross, we have Ed Klein, John Parsons, Chris Mon, Chuck Volk, Susan Sampson, Andrew Moore, Bill DePoe, Lisa Miller. We also have some guests on the call today. Jennifer McKenna and Brian Chamberlain from the city of Allentown are on the call. Amanda Schumacher from Horton Lawson is on, along with Herb Higginbotham and Mason Beck from HDR.
Thank you. We will now review the agenda. Are there any changes, additions, corrections to the agenda and need for executive session?
No changes to the agenda. I just do have one item under staff comments, no executive sessions.
Okay. Now, moving now to the approval of the minutes from October 25th, 2021.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as published for October the 20th.
I'll second that.
The motion made by Dick and seconded by Amir. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, ayes have it. Thank you. Did fail to say that we did receive our packets in advance. Hard copy mailed to our home, so everybody got it. And also was available electronically. And we'll be talking about what pages electronically viewing it. Thank you. At this time, we open up the floor to any public that have any comments on non-agenda items. Are there any comments?
No comment here.
Nothing, thank you.
Jenny and Brian. Okay, moving on then to action and discussion items. We have one under finance and administration. The 2022 water and wastewater rate schedules in our packet, purple copies. Digital board package pages 7 through 32.
Okay, thank you. So we have our water and wastewater rate schedule for 2022 in front of us, and I have just a few comments to make. First of all, everything that's shown here are items that we previously talked about to some degree or another through the 2022 budget process. So no surprises in terms of what you're seeing in the packet. I have some introductory comments in the memo about municipal authority structure and our nonprofit structure, the need to capture revenues to cover our expenses, and also the infrastructure investment that's required, not just here in our service area, but nationwide. Those are some of the drivers for how what's happening with our rate. So in the memo that accompanies the rate schedules, we're sharing the key drivers for this year's rate increases. And they are, the first one relates to the Allentown lease agreement. In 2020, we authorized an amendment to the lease agreement with Allentown that changed how our rate structure looks. And we are going into phase 2 of that change, that transition to the new rate structure. So the Allentown rates for both water and sewer are impacted by that. The primary purpose for that lease agreement amendment in terms of the rate piece of it, at least, is to provide additional funding for the capital improvements that are necessary for the system in Allentown. Another driver, and also goes back to the 2020 agreement that we have with Allentown, relates to the water purchase cost for the suburban division to purchase water from the Allentown division. And in 2022, we're expecting to see about a $750,000 increase in expense there. And that's driven primarily by our ability to do more capital investment in the water filtration plant and then sharing those costs back to the municipalities on an equitable basis. And then,
Can I ask you a question?
yeah, sure.
Maybe you don't know, but maybe I'm jumping ahead, but the email you sent us about the capital projects that are going to be paid for through the city, is that going to offset some of those capital project costs? Will that have future rate impacts?
Yes and no. So the I was going to cover this under the staff comments, but any future funding that we would get through the city American Rescue Plan funds would offset future project costs, and that would offset the capital cost recovery charges that apply to city ratepayer rates. It would not impact the cost to the suburban division because the funds would be applied to the city portion of the project costs.
Thank you.
Yep. And the last driver for rates this year in our suburban water division relates to the investment on repair and replacement type projects in our capital program and increasing that to about $2.4 million coming through the rates to fund those kinds of projects. So we take all of these pieces and then the regular increases in costs together. And we also layer in the Western Lehigh and city signatory agreements and how the rates work through that process, which Jennifer Montero presented to you in October. And all of those things together are incorporated then into the actual rate structures or rate schedules that are presented today. So for the water rate schedule, which is the first attachment to the memo, we have the changes on page 1 related to the suburban division fixed charge and volume charge. This is as presented, so no changes there from our budget presentations. We also have a small change to the public fire protection service, which is in accordance with our 2018 rate study. And then going all the way back to page 9 is where the Allentown water rates are shown. And all of the changes that are shown on that page are in accordance with the lease agreement with Allentown. The wastewater rate schedule is the second attachment to the memo. And here we have a few changes on pages 5 and 7 that relate to the Western Lehigh user charges and Little Lehigh Relief Interceptor user charges that Jennifer presented to us in October. That's the exceptional strength charges and then the flow charges for those two systems. Again, on page 9, we have the Allentown sewer rates in accordance with the lease agreement. And then on the last page, page 10, we have some minor changes to the exceptional strength charges and the industrial pretreatment program fees, which are based on actual costs. So final comment, just to make you aware, the city of Allentown has reviewed these rates and our calculations on the lease rates and have agreed with our calculations. So that's an important step that we take every year to make sure we're doing everything the right way. So what I'm asking for today is an approval of the water and the wastewater rate schedules as presented. And then we would come back to you in December with a review of tapping fees, which is a separate calculation those have to be approved by a resolution, which we're still working on. The last 2 pages of the memo are provided to give you just a sense of how our rates compare to from one community to another, as well as how our rates compare to other communities where we do not provide service. So you can see across the board we're providing rates that are within the range of other water and sewer utilities across the Lehigh Valley. And for the core of our service area, which is Upper Macungie, Lower Macungie, and Upper Milford Township, and the city of Allentown, those rates as proposed are among the lowest in the Lehigh Valley. So that's a good thing.
I have a question. I brought this up in the last meeting, that I think the Allentown rates, I'm guesstimating here, but a third of those rates are really due to the bond issue and essentially the funding of the pension funds in Allentown, and we're using the water system as a way to pay for all this. And still Allentown is well within the margins here of at least the data points we have. That means if that were not, if we didn't have to carry the burden of to drag the anchor behind us of the pension funds, these rates would be really competitive. Or are other municipalities doing the same thing and paying for other stuff through the water rates? And maybe we don't know that, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a mixture. I mean, every community is potentially doing it a slightly different way.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit last time, how some communities are regulated by the Public Utility Commission, in which case they have to make a rate case based on their actual expenses. So the city of Bethlehem, for example, is a PUC regulated utility. And so their rates have to be proven to the PUC to cover water expenses only and not the extra stuff. However, in some of the communities on the far right-hand side of the chart where we're looking at Aqua America, Pennsylvania American, they are PUC regulated, but they can put shareholder profit and other things into the rates because of that. So it's sort of a mixed bag depending on the type of utility. The one thing I should point out, not to be the bearer of bad news, but in the city of Allentown, the rates, we're on phase 2 of the rate transition. And so next year or the year after, we're gonna see some significant increases there to get up to the full rate schedule and through that transition period. So that yellow bar is gonna move to the right over time. And that also is to cover large investments in the aging infrastructure that aren't covered by the debt burden that you're talking about, Ted.
Thank you.
Just, I think building on what Ed was saying, it's very difficult to compare because they don't know what is included in that cost, what is not. But I think as we go forward, ability to be communicating that a portion of that, it is basically a pension fund that we're carrying. So people recognize, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but sometimes people look at the rate is this much, but they don't know that portion of them is LCA accepting the pensions fund. So I don't know, it's something that we can include in our communications or informing, the ratepayer that what is all included in that number.
It's a difficult question because your average customer may not really care what's included. They just care about what they have to pay and how it compares to others. So, this is the agreement that we have with Allentown. This is how we're moving it forward, but we can certainly weave into it. I know that Susan really works to highlight the infrastructure piece of it, what we need to spend on the aging infrastructure, but there is that whole other component to the rates that is there. Yeah.
Just a question, just so I understand. So if you're a signatory, like, I don't know, say Salisbury or whatever, is that in here of what they're paying, or how is that determined for wastewater treatment?
The wastewater signatory rates for City of Allentown are not included in the rate schedule. They are based on, there's an estimated rate based on the budget and flows that they pay throughout the year, but then they do what they call a true up after all of the actual flows and all the actual expenses are in. So there's really not a rate per se that we can say this is what they will pay. They're paying something on an estimated basis throughout the year and then true it up at the end of the year.
And that's for all the signatories, that's the way that works, okay, so that's not in here then.
Right.
Okay.
The Western Lehigh rates that are in here are work kind of the same way, but because we officially adopt them and provide them, have that relationship with the Western Lehigh communities, we publish them here. But then there is a true up process at the end of the year as well.
Okay. So at this time, you're seeking approval of this documents. Water and sewer rate schedule for 2022.
Yeah, I'd like to just make one other comment, that these were published in advance. They were published actually in advance of the budget approval, so that we could get some visibility to it with our customers. And it's been included in our customer newsletter as well to try to let customers know that we have some increases coming, and that these are available for public comment on our website. If we haven't received any comments at this point, but if we receive any prior to January 1st, we'll certainly share them with the board. January 1st is when they would go into effect.
Move they be approved.
Thank you, Linda.
I'll second.
And Jeff, second by Jeff. So we have a motion for us to accept the proposed 2022 water and sewer rate schedules. Are there any questions? Need to do a voice.
So on the motion for approval of the 2022 water and wastewater rate schedule, Brian Noggle,
Yes.
Lindsay Potter,
Yes,
Norma Cusick,
Yes,
Ted Lyons,
Yes.
Linda Rosenfeld,
yes,
Jeff Morgan,
Yes,
Amir Kamili.
Yes.
Thank you. That's 7 votes in favor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A lot of work goes into that as well. All right, moving on to wastewater. We have 2 items. The first one is Klein's Island Sewer System, Regional Sewer Capacity and Wet Weather Planning, Rain-Derived Inflow and Infiltration, RDII analysis. It's the salmon documents, digital board package, pages 33 through 40. And we are seeking approval. Board is seeking approval.
Just to kick us off, Phil's going to go through this one and the next one. They're somewhat related, but I have just a little something to put up on the screen to help us put it in context. The document I'm putting on the screen was also published to our website and emailed out to the board as well. So, Phil, you want to review what this is showing us?
Sure.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to take 5 minutes quickly to go over the various roles and responsibilities of the different players involved with this 537 process. The structure may not look familiar, but the people involved are, if you recall back in May of 2020, we unveiled our rough estimate of the program structure. And it's remained intact since then. So just quickly running down, of course, we have DEP at the top. And then we have all 15 KISS municipalities beneath them. And again, I'm not going to go through each line on what it says here, but I just want to point out a couple of important things with the KISS municipalities. So their main role, they attend monthly meetings. They've given us flow projections through 2050. And the biggest piece is they are in charge of the implementation and execution of their own I&I program. So we can give advice to each of the municipalities, but it's up to them to execute their projects. Then as a side, we have the Western Lehigh Sewer Partnership, which is our LCA 7 signatories. And then again, beneath them is LCA and Arcadis. As you know, Arcadis has been involved with the Western Lehigh group for quite a while now. So then going back to the KISS side, I also want to make a very important note that LCA and the city communicate a lot about this 537 process. So we have a really strong relationship with the city. We talk about the consultants, the schedule, how it's going to be paid for. So then beneath the LCA and the city, so LCA has hired AECom to be our technical lead, because as you know, LCA is the driver behind the expansion. So we need more allocation. So we've hired out AECom to help drive the bus regarding the overseer, in quotes, of the technical side. And then, of course, we had Aero do the interim 537 plan, which was approved in June. And they are most likely going to do the final preparation of the plan, the actual writing of the plan. And on the other side, we have to be determined the financial and legal piece. So there's 8 sections in a 537 plan. And this section 7 talks about the institutional side of the plan. So that's going to be a big hurdle to overcome, the section 7. So more to follow about who's going to be doing that piece right there. And then beneath AECom, again, we have Arcadis as the overall system conveyance lead. And of course, they're doing the model preparation as we speak. We have Jacobs at the pretreatment plant, because they operate the plant and they did the analysis this past year about expansion options. And then Kleinfelder, they are the technical lead for Klein's Island. One gentleman at Kleinfelder is intimately informed about the plant, and the city prefers that, that he stays involved. So again, AECom oversees all 3 of these players. And again, anything that's done with these consultants, it's not in a vacuum. There's always this back and forth checking. So that's the overall structure. And before we get into the authorization requests, I want to point out 2 more important things. The plan to DEP is due to them by March of 25. So if it takes a minimum of 6 months to go through the approval process by the municipalities, that means that we have to have the plan ready to them by the end of September of 24. So as you can imagine, beginning of next year, things are going to accelerate, and it's not going to stop until it's submitted. So there's been a kind of a lull right now as the metering has wrapped up. But again, as we approach next year, the model starts to get completed, and then we have to start running scenarios. It's going to be nonstop until March of 2025. So you may be seeing me a couple times next year too. So on to the first request. This is in regards to the Klein's Island system, the conveyance system. And what I'm asking for is a RDII analysis approval. And what that stands for is rain-derived inflow and infiltration. So it is not excluding the city. I'll get to why I say excluding the city. So with I&I, you have 7 big steps. You meter, you do the QA/QC of the data. You do this RDI analysis, which tells you what basins are the leakiest. After you have that information, you go in the field and you determine what techniques are used to reduce that I&I. And then, of course, you write the plan and then you execute the projects, and then you repeat it. So you can kind of compare how effective your program was. So what I'm asking for approval is this 3rd step, this RDII step. And what this RDII is, it's a common tool used in the industry to characterize wet weather system response. So again, we're gonna have all the data, it would be QA/QC'd. And what I'm requesting is Arcadis do an analysis of that data by basin. They're gonna tell the signatories, X signatory, these basins are your worst.
What's the basin?
Basin is where everything flows by gravity to one point. So for example, the city has like 50 different basins that all flow to, 50 different points and they eventually all get to Klein's Island, right? So we can't monitor every single basin, because that would be outrageously priced. So what we're doing here is we have strategically placed meters. And what Arcadis is gonna do is they're gonna look at each meter by meter basin, and they're gonna say within that basin, which neighborhood is worst? What's the worst factor? So if you remember a couple minutes ago, I said this is excluding the city. The city had asked us to authorize their portion in February of this year, which you've authorized. So this is the remaining signatories piece. So by the end of March of 2022, Arcadis will have done this analysis for all meters that were part of the program. And speaking of the program, it started in March of this year. And we just stopped the clock October 29th. So we have 8 months of good data that's being QA/QC'd. And then again, in 5 months from now, we'll have this RDI analysis completed. So it's going to be up to the signatories again to do with what they want with this analysis. Again, provide guidance. And if they don't act on it, they don't act on it. The kicker is though, unless Arcadis knows exactly what projects are proposed, they can't predict the potential reduction in their model. So it behooves the signatories to come up with a game plan so they can tell Arcadis, we're going to tackle this section 2024, and so on and so on. Because if not, then the model, so Arcadis, they can't guess what they're going to do. So they need to know exactly what everyone's going to do and when and where. If not, the potential for oversizing is real. So, if say X signatory doesn't say anything, then that's just going to affect everyone downstream. So that's why I want to, just drive it home that we're going to give this data to the signatories, but they have to do something after it.
To Phil, obviously the DEP is the head of making sure that this all gets done. How involved are they in that response by the individual municipalities when they have the data? That will they intervene to kind of encourage reductions in those areas, or are they still going to wait for us to do it, or just leave the municipality to decide what they want to do?
Yeah, Lisa, you can chime in here too, but I'm glad you brought this up, because when we first met with DEP about this 537 process 2 years ago, he was very clear that this is a top priority for him, I&I program. So to answer your question about reporting to DEP, since we're under connection management plan, he's making the regions submit quarterly reports to him, which spells out, I have to ask every signatory, what have you done this quarter? So there's a little blurb in the report about what they've done per quarter. If he reads that, I don't know. But it's formally submitted to him as their progress.
So the question comes down to when the report is made as to the analysis being done and seeing where the major amounts of inflow and I&I are occurring. Will that will be transmitted to DEP, and then will they monitor the actual performance, or do we have to let them know what people are doing, or do the municipalities have to do that
I'll chime in.
Yeah, I think that we don't want to mix the interim plan with the future plan. So this RDII analysis is part of developing the future plan. The results of the RDII analysis will be included in the Act 537 plan that we submit in 2025, along with each of the municipalities' plans for rehab, along with the bigger plans for system upgrades, conveyance capacity, and treatment plans. So this is one component of the 537 plan, and DEP will make the determination of whether what we submitted is acceptable or not acceptable. If there's a signatory who has a lot of leakage that shows up on this report, and their plan that they submit with 537 shows a lot of work or not enough work, that's when DEP will look at that and ask those questions. What we don't know is, coming out of the 537 process, what will be our future reporting process to DEP. We have an annual chapter, what's called a Chapter 94 report, where we submit information on our flows and loads to the system, as well as repair and rehab work that we're doing. So it could be as simple as that annual report, or DEP may require us to do continued quarterly reporting. We just don't know. So that kind of remains to be seen. But certainly getting the data in a format so all the signatories have the same level of detail so they can put their plans together is an important part of the process.
Just to follow up too about DEP, say next year, I don't think they have the staff to look at, to comment this next year about what we're doing, just because they're overwhelmed. But they, it goes in the formal record as to what each signatory provides to me that goes to DEP per quarter. So
Just a comment or question for you. So, other clients and projects I've worked on, if you have an agreement, so that the city of Allentown has an agreement with the signatories, I gotta believe there's some I&I language in there, even if it's ancient, right? Yes, it's a unique situation because it's not an agreement with LCA and the signatories. It's an agreement between Allentown and the signatories. So you probably have some ability to encourage them to cooperate, I would think.
We have some. I think the challenge is we're kind of talking a few years ahead. So by 2025, when we submit this plan, and we have all the sections of the plan put together, one of the sections that Phil mentioned previously, this section 7, is really about what is the structure for how this work gets done, how it gets paid for, how it gets monitored. And right now, we don't know what that's going to look like, because our existing intermunicipal agreements don't really give us the teeth that we would need to enforce certain projects to get done at the municipal level. So not that LCA necessarily wants to or needs to be the enforcer, but with very little authority involved in these current intermunicipal agreements, it's difficult to say that the work will or won't get done. So that's a big piece that we're going to need to all come to the table and understand. How are we going to hold each other accountable, and what does the future intermunicipal agreements look like to make some of that happen? We're not there yet, but we do have that box on the chart that says to be determined on the financial and legal services. We're going to need some help with that.
I wanted to focus a little bit on that one part of the process is how do you plan on getting to that point of having somebody that can help pull all together? What are your thoughts on that at this point? To look at the intermunicipal agreements and try to come up with something that will satisfy the 537 plan.
It's a progress. The city and LCA have been doing that, or continuing to do that. A thorough review of every existing agreement, at least to know what it says.
How old are these agreements?
The oldest one is 1959. And there's no expiration dates on these.
But in order to complete the 537, we've got to find common cause.
Yeah.
If we redo the agreements, the problem is, how do you achieve that? I mean, Allentown's looking at it, we're looking at it, but we really need somebody on the outside that looks at it from a totally outside perspective too. And the sooner the better to start working on that, because to try and comprehend everything in 1959 agreements and that last in perpetuity is going to take some big effort by somebody. So the quicker we get to that TBD.
I don't think we're prepared to give a full plan on that. That's certainly something that has been discussed quite often, and city folks who are on the call and myself, Phil, and some others are starting to map out what that process would look like, but we haven't gotten to the point of saying what type of resource do we need? Is it a lawyer? Is it a negotiator? Is it a just a management consultant? What does that really look like to get all this stuff together? And what we need in terms of the intermunicipal agreements might be different depending on which alternative we select, because the pretreatment plant alternative has totally different consequences and ramifications than a Klein's Island solution. So there's a lot of moving parts to that. We're working through.
Those agreements have a pretty big technical piece.
Yeah.
In addition to the legal part of it, so it is really a unique. It's not just a legal document.
Right.
Sounds like a mammoth project.
Yes.
It is.
Start on it as soon as you can.
Yes, it is.
But obviously you're working on it.
So just to close up my authorization request, the deliverable will be a PowerPoint that Arcadis prepares per signatory. And he did this last year for the Western Lehigh signatories. And it's like, it's a 100-slide PowerPoint deck. That's what he prepares per signatory. And he goes through every basin that is problematic. And he informs them of this is something needs to be done in this basin if you want to fix your problem. So that being said, again, it'll be the city plus this authorization will be wrapped up by March of 2022. And then if the signatories would like to go into the field to pinpoint techniques, they can so choose to. But again, Arcadis would like to have something by the end of next year regarding every signatory's plan for the next 5-10 years. So my request is for a PSA authorization to Arcadis in the amount of $110,000. And then my CPA authorization includes an additional $20,000 for staff and contingency.
Phil, I just want to make one other comment, and I'll use one of Amir's favorite words, metric. I found in some of these other studies like this, as long as you have a good, solidly technically based benchmark to say, well, this is a good basin, this is a bad basin, that's helpful, because, and I'm sure they will. That's very helpful that the number's 200 and the value you come up with is 2,000. Well, you're 10 times worse than the criteria. So that's really big, and it's helpful when people can understand that when they're comparing it against something that's
Yes.
it's an EPA number or a DEP number or something. So
That's a good point you bring up, Jeff, because this deliverable is going to be highly technical. So each signatory as a sewer engineer needs to be, involved with this. This is
So what do you measure flow under normal conditions, whatever they are,
right.
and you measure flow in periods of rainfall,
Right.
and the difference is infiltration.
Yep. You take into account groundwater conditions and all
And
that.
plus you have that stuff to deal with as well, yeah.
There's different types of flow patterns that they would look for, like, a very sharp peak, over very short duration might be an inflow, like a manhole where water is inundating into that manhole, versus a more gradual rise might be a groundwater issue. Nighttime flows, when you wouldn't expect nighttime flows, even if it's not raining, all that stuff gets characterized in this kind of a study. So you can see what type of issues you have and then dive deeper into the solutions.
So the fix would be the same, though, you gotta seal the pipe, right? I mean,
Essentially.
essentially, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you gotta.
Yeah, I mean, you fix the manhole, fix the main line, fix the private side. That's where it gets dicey, right? As to what fix is needed.
yeah, so what they actually do is they'll come up to try and make it like a unit, a gallon per day per inch mile of pipe, where you divide the pipe diameter and the length of pipe and come up with a basin that has a number there that's kind of for that basin, and it's like a unit number. And you can say that basin's good or bad compared to another, benchmark. So that kind of is where generically where they start, and then go into all the other details, looking at the storms and the graphs and flows and all that stuff.
For better understanding for myself, so there are few steps. The first thing is putting the meter, then is a QA and QC to make sure that meters are working. And then the step is here, we're going to look at that analysis to see if there's a leakage or not somewhere. And then the next step is to use the data, do the modeling to see what is the optimum. Because how do we feed, which data get fed to the model? To look at the futures and optimize sewer line, I don't know what's.
Yeah, so the data that's collected, so the first step is the meters, right?
Yes.
And then that's QA/QC,
Right.
and that gets directly plugged into the model.
Okay, that data get to the
Yep,
model.
and then, of course, the future projections. So we have the existing flow, which is presented in the data. Then you have to add on the future flow, which is the municipalities provide. And then what Arcadis needs is, what can we reduce? Which is done by I&I projects. And in order to reduce, you need to do this analysis first. Then you have to go into the field and determine what techniques are used to achieve that reduction.
So if the data from QA/QC has fed to the model, and you go and fix all the leakage, the I&I that you have, then the whole system gets changed. Don't you have to go back and remodel it again?
You do, that's always a dilemma, is when exactly do you redo that? Do you do a 10-year I&I program and then remodel in 10 years? Do you do a 15 program and remodel in 15 years? So that's a dilemma, yes.
Just to clarify, the model itself, once it's built, it's also built based on the current system components, so the size and material of the pipes and everything that's in the system.
Sure.
So if we say we're gonna fix these sections of the system, that can be modeled with current data to see if it impacts the flows up or down or like that. So
Yeah, it's the current flow data that's fixed, right? And so then in order to reduce, how can you reduce flow? Arcadis can tinker with the model and say, well, that section is going to be lined, so we can apply a factor to reduce the flow here. So that's what he's going to do per signatory if provided the information.
Thank you.
Okay, this time we're seeking a motion to approve the capital project authorization of $130,000. That includes $110,000 professional service authorization to Arcadis for doing the RD and I analysis.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ted and seconded by Amir. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to the next wastewater topic. It is Suburban Division, Western Lehigh Service Area, Engineering and Program Support, seeking approval. It's the gray packet. And it's also digital board packages, pages 41 through 46.
I have this back up on the screen just to, this is kind of a guide to help us visualize where we are talking about. The last one we did with the RDI analysis is Arcadis working through the KISS program for all the KISS municipalities. And now the next one that Phil's going to talk about is still Arcadis, but it's for the Western Lehigh group.
Yes, thanks, Lisa. And this should be a little bit quicker. What this is basically it's an on-call request for Arcadis for the Western Lehigh group. And again, he's been doing this annually for quite a while now. The last request was in February of 2020. And he just exhausted his money recently. So that's the reason why we're going to the board for this request. And what this request covers is, again, it's on-call services where I asked Arcadis for help or advice. The biggest piece is the meeting time that's involved with this. I mean, we're talking, no joke, like seven, 8 meetings per month with different people. And this covers the time needed for these meetings. That's the biggest piece with this request. Another example would be, a small task at the pre-treatment plant, for example, or, the schedule update. So again, it's on call as needed, this time and material. Again, this is just an annual retainer for our case for Western Lehigh. And what the request is for $100,000 for the PSA and 120 for the CPA, which includes staff and a contingency. And we do say that this goes through 2022. But again, if he has money left in 2023, he'll just continue to use it as needed.
Basic engineering support of the whole process. And it's been going on for a number of years and will continue for another 4 years. Annually increase it or just when they run out of money.
They use it until they run out and then we come back. So like Bill mentioned, the last time we were here for this authorization was February of 2020. So it lasted a year and a half, almost 2 years, the last authorization.
All right,
I'll make a motion.
second,
a motion made by Jeff, seconded by Linda for approval of the capital project authorization, Suburban Division, $120,000 for Western Lehigh Conveyance Engineering and Program Support with a professional service authorization to Acatus to support that process for $100,000. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
aye,
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. That's with this with Tony, or is that Jim Shelton? or-
Jim Shelton.
Jim Shelton. All right, this time we move on to monthly project updates, information packages, November report was attached in our documents. It's a digital board package, pages 47 to 58.
So if you had a chance to review the monthly project update, you'll see there's not a lot on here for action or discussion for November that we didn't already cover today. However, I wanted to point out the under finance and administration, the second item under action items, the 2020 audit and financial statements. There's a couple updates on this one. The LCA statements were actually completed by April of this year, so we were on time. And we're still not sure what our schedule is going to be because of the PMRS. So it's scratch the September 30th on that. That's highlighted there. That should say April 30th that our statements were completed. And November, we do not believe we'll have a presentation for you because we still don't have what we need from PMRS. Ed, anything you want to add on that one?
No,
Does it put us in any jeopardy at all for
No,
financial reporting requirements?
we put a set of preliminary statements out there and designated them as that. So we did the refinancing based on them preliminary numbers. It's not putting this at risk of anything, especially with respect to GFOA. They have been granting us extensions and because of the PMRS problems that are well known.
So what are the problems they're having?
They cannot verify the numbers with PMRS with respect to the totality of the entire program, of which we're just a part. And they can attest that what they provided, what PMRS provided to us in terms of a disclosure was okay, but they're trying to test the entire portfolio. And that's been a problem. PMRS has had staffing issues, they've had system issues, and trying to sort through all that has been very tedious and long. So when they are finally able to basically sign off that they agree in totality with the PMRS numbers, then they can sign off on our statements. And we're actually prepared to say the day you sign it is the day that we can essentially issue the annual financial report. So
Is this unusual to have this type of delay?
we've had delays from PMRS, but not to this extent. Not that you would say that there was systemic problems.
Okay,
Yeah, just trying to go with the flow on this one.
I think we asked the question before, is there another alternative to PMRS?
There's always a chance, there's always a way to look at things differently. And I think based on what we've seen in the past and the nature of this one and the concern about it still happening, yeah, I mean, it's something that we should at least think about, so.
You know, we had a good series of conference calls with the PMRS staff this summer about the issues, and their fund performance and the way they're managing the funds is good, is strong. They're having good results that way. It's their system administration that they're really struggling with. They did a system conversion, software conversion that went badly. Then they had staff turnover where they were almost gutted in terms of their staffing. So they have all new staff and a system that wasn't implemented properly. That's really the big issue that they're struggling with. But it doesn't give you a lot of comfort when you can't get the data that you need.
So we're obviously not alone. It was a consortium of everybody getting together and saying, what can we do about this? Or...
That's what we did this summer was we actually, Ed and I organized with some other authorities and municipalities that are all with PMRS to do a conference, series of conference calls with their staff and to ask all more questions and hear the answers all at the same time.
How big a part are we of that whole thing? De minimis?
Compared to, I mean, they have some rather large utilities.
Yeah.
City of Allentown is with PMRS as well, so they're significantly larger than we are.
Yeah, I think it would be tough to gauge, I mean, what percentage we are of the total, because they do have some rather large ones.
Okay, thank you. Continuing on.
Just to ask if there's any questions on the information items in the report.
Checking a note I have on there. Okay. All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 9, staff comments. You said you had one.
Yeah, I do have a staff comment. Wanted to share some information with you and news that we learned Wednesday night that City of Allentown City Council last week voted to allocate up to $15.5 million of their American Rescue Plan funds to water and sewer projects. And sincerely appreciate the city's support for these projects. Essentially, what the American Rescue Plan does is provides funding directly to municipalities for a variety of different uses. And water and sewer infrastructure is one of those approved uses. The funds need to be allocated by 2024 and then used by 2026. So the municipalities that receive these funds are all across the nation and here in Pennsylvania, really trying to make sure that where they put the funds, they know the projects will get done and have beneficial use for the community. So the water and sewer projects that the city has targeted are good ones that we think are really important, including the sewer system rehabilitation work that the city is responsible for. And then also water main replacements through the lease, we're required to do 3 miles of water mains through 2024, and this funding would support that program. And then another $7.2 million for water filter upgrades at the water treatment plant, which is really a fantastic outcome. The project itself is intended to be or expected to be about $12 million for the water filters. So the 7.2 million would go toward the city's portion of that project. That gets to the
Yeah,
question,
that's what I was gonna ask. So
Jeff, that you were
that would
asking.
reduce their capital recovery
Exactly.
charge for the city residents.
Yeah, so for all 3 of those projects, the sewer rehabilitation, the water mains, and the filter projects, that funding would offset what LCA has to pay for those projects, and then in turn offset the recovery charge to the customers. So it's a great outcome. And that's about all we know at this point, because the city is still going to be working through their process of how they receive the funds and how they allocate it and all of that. And we'll be working with Jenny McKenna and Brian Chamberlain, I'm sure.
This infrastructure bill was just passed, isn't it?
No.
This is another.
This is, the rescue plan funds are directly related to the COVID relief type
That's right.
funding. And so the city received or will receive a specific amount of money by municipality. Lehigh County also received or will receive a significant portion of that rescue plan funding. So the infrastructure bill is really a separate thing, and we'll learn more details about that.
No idea what that.
Yeah, from what I've heard and read about the infrastructure bill is really authorizing the programs that we already use, like the PENDES program, and also the WIFIA program, that's EPA's infrastructure financing program, putting money into those programs so that utilities like LCA have access to low cost financing or potentially some grants, depending on the project. Also lead service line replacements, which we definitely want to keep our eyes on. The city. So we'll certainly express our appreciation to the city for their support for these projects and work closely with the city administration to make sure their needs are met, how they use the funds. And just wanted to share that with everyone. Good news.
Okay, very good news. Great news for LCA, for the city, and for the customers. It's great that you're continuing to work together in a positive way. Jenny or Brian, do you have any comments you want to make?
Hi, Brian. Yeah, thank you. Liesl did a good job in describing it. We're going to be meeting with the city administration to determine what particular requirements there are going to be. This program will probably need to be very transparent. And so we're looking forward to maybe putting things on both of our websites about the progress of these so that the residents, the citizens, the ratepayers can see what it's being used for. And then at the end of the day, we expect a very strenuous audit process on this. So we're going to try to get ahead of it and figure out what we need to do and then work with LCA, obviously, to make sure that we will be in alignment with all of that.
That's super. Thank you. Any other comments?
Brian, I
Yeah.
would like to make one comment. I watched the Zoom presentation. I think it was a chamber sponsored with Liesl and Becky, and I can't remember her last name, and Evan, and I can't remember his last name, that was done on the needs in the future for especially water. And Liesl did a fantastic job on that. I just wanted to make that known.
Thank you very
The
much.
program was about 2 weeks ago.
Thank you for your efforts. Okay, solicitor, you done with your comments, your staff comments?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to just follow up on that one because Linda, I do appreciate you attending and your kind words. But I also wanted to recognize someone who's on the call who, you haven't heard from in a while. Mark Bowen is our process improvement and technology manager. And while I was doing this work with the Chamber of Commerce, Mark was out in California as a keynote speaker for the ESRI GIS conference. So we've got a couple celebrities in our midst today. And I wasn't able to see his presentation, but I heard he did a fantastic job.
Give us the non-acronym.
Oh, gosh, no, Mark's gonna have to do that. Mark, you want to tell us about your presentation?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So ESRI stands for Environmental Systems Research Institute. So it's a GIS software company for mapping and managing assets. So my presentation focused on how to leverage technology and GIS systems to help tackle the lead and copper rule. So how can utilities leverage this new technology to build up their inventory so that way they can build programs around replacing lead and copper lines.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, I think this board has said several times that we encourage being out there in the public and giving presentations and telling them more about who we are and what we do and the good of it all for their customers. So thank you very much for your efforts. More?
That's it.
Okay, solicitor.
No comments.
All right, any public comments on any topics whatsoever?
Yes, hi, Brian, it's Jenny again.
Hi, Jenny.
I just wanted to make mention, I've noted that the Allentown Pension Fund's been mentioned twice, once last meeting and this meeting. And I just wanted to mention this. While it's true that the city's pension fund was the driving reason behind the city's decision to lease the system, the debt, how was it described? The anchor being dragged was due to a determination of the value through the bid submission process. In the spirit of partnership, I just think it's good to make sure we're clear.
Hey, Jenny, can you repeat that last comment you made? I didn't, it's a process.
In its entirety?
No, I think you mentioned a process.
I was just saying that I said the value, in the partnership. I just thought that it was for me, it's a partnership, quality of partnership issue for clarity's sake.
Okay, I think that we do want to stress that we're beyond all that and we're moving forward and we're in partnership and cooperation and things are working very well as a result of everything that was done in the past. So,
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Any other comments? All right, we do not have an executive session, so seeing no further action before us, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating. Stay safe.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.